Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ron Halber, and I am the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington. The JCRC serves as the public affairs and community relations arm of the organized Jewish community in our nation's capital. We represent more than 100 organizations and synagogues throughout the region, including the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington. A key component of our work and mission is empowering, training, and mobilizing our community to engage and advocate for Israel. Thank you to the more than 200 people from our region, Israel, and throughout the country who are joining us for today's webinar. I would also like to thank Alexis Schwartz and Adam Odesser, JCRC's Israel Action Center Director and Associate, respectively, for arranging this webinar. On Tuesday, Israelis went to the polls for the fourth time in 2 years. We are joined today by Tal Schneider, political correspondent for the Times of Israel, for a post-election analysis. Hopefully, Tal will be able to shed some light on what seems to be, once again, a non-conclusive outcome. Tal is currently the political correspondent for both the Times of Israel and its sister Hebrew language site, Zaman Yisrael. Previously, she wrote for Israel's Economic Daily Globes and was the Washington, D.C. bureau chief for Ma'ariv Daily. From 2011 to 2017, she established and ran an independent political blog, which quickly became a leading source for news and analysis and catapulted her to the front line of Israeli and radio pundits. She won the 2012 Excellence in Digital Journalism Award by Google and by Tel Aviv's Journalists Association, and is a recipient of the 2015 Olmutz Award for Public Courage and Integrity. Tal will speak to us for about 15 minutes. That's quite a bio, Tal. Tal will speak to us for about 15 minutes, and then we will open the floor for some Q&A from our audience. Several of our viewers have submitted questions ahead of time, but if you have had a question at any point, please use the Q&A feature found on the bottom of your screen to send them to us. In order to maximize the number of questions, I will probably combine several of them if there's a consistent theme coming in so we could use our time most expeditiously. Please note that this call is on the record and is being recorded. So I start. Tal, we're just days away from Passover, Manish Tanah. I have to ask, how is this election different from all other elections, and what do we now know about where things stand?
Okay, hi, thank you all. Thank you so much for inviting me. As I told Ron before we started, I was a resident of your area. I lived in Rockville, Potomac for many years, so I feel welcome to be, of course, I'm in Israel right now, but you know, I know your region very well. And I also want to start by saying Chag Sameach and happy Passover. With all due respect to the recurring election here, you know, my mind is set to the table and how will I cook and arrange everything for Saturday night. So that's that's our mission as a family, as in Israelis. Manish Tanah, what's changed? Manish Tanah halayla hazeh. Actually, just before we began our conversation, like an hour or 2 hours ago, we got the final results, the final tally from the Central Election Committee. And as you already understood, or maybe you're reading the headlines, we are in a deadlock. We are in a problem, and it's a huge problem. Because there's only one thing that makes all the party agree at the moment. Nobody wants to have a fifth election, nobody. It's just, I mean, it's been too much as it is. I think the fourth election were absolutely not necessary because we had a government, a unity government that was initiated by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a year ago. He turned to, you know, his challenger, Benny Gantz, and he begged him to join into unity. That was the beginning of the pandemic and the beginning of, you know, has all around the world hysterical times. And Benny Gantz actually, you know, decided enough is enough, and he joined. He just broke all of his campaign promises, and he joined Netanyahu, only to be breached by the prime minister a month later with respect to some of the things that Netanyahu obliged to do. So the coalition agreement was immediately breached, as I said, on May 2020, and it took some time because of the budget and other procedures, but we went into the fourth election. And yet again, I mean, what do you expect if you do the same thing over and over again? Do you expect a different result? I mean, as one really important and smart Jewish scientist, Einstein, said, if you do the same thing over and over again, don't expect different results. So we are absolutely with a problem. Netanyahu's bloc, which include the Likud, the two ultra-Orthodox parties, and two religious Zionist parties. One Yamina, it's a religious Zionist, but also secular party, and another one, it's the religious Zionism. This is the name of the party. They call themselves the religious Zionism. They include some small factions of the Kahanists, the people that are descended of the Kahanists of Meir Kahana, and another new, very extreme, almost you can call it alt-right, on the verge of alt-right meets KKK. It's almost like on that very severe spot, a group named Noam. These people, they managed to get six seats together. So if you count those two religious Zionism parties and two Orthodox parties and the Likud, you reach the number of 59. And as you all may know, you need, in Israel's parliament, in the Knesset, we have 120 seats. If you want to form a government, you need to have, half of that plus one. So that's 61 seats. And with 59 seats, you are almost for sure unable to form a government. Netanyahu hopes at the moment is to have Ra'am. Ra'am, it's the Islamic Movement of Israel. It is a party who is based on the Muslims' principle of the Quran, but it's not heavily, it is ultra-Orthodox on the Muslim side, but the leader of the party is pretty a moderate person. By the way, his name is Mansour Abbas, and he is a dentist by his profession, very skilled and skilled and savvy politician, even though he's very new, but he's been in the scene for 2 years now. And Netanyahu is courting him to join government. And if he will join, we're not sure if he will join government or he may support the right wing from the outside, which means Netanyahu can swear in a government, but he will heavily rely on the Muslims' Islamic movement, which is, quite, different from anything we knew. It's probably not going to happen because, as I told you, the alt-right or the Kahanists and the entire groups of these people that are part of Netanyahu bloc, they already say, forget it. We will never sit with them together. So, and we will not rely on them from the outside. So Mansour Abbas can also work with the other side, which is, it's headed by Yair Lapid, the opposition leader. The party name is Yesh Atid. Yair Lapid, for those of you who don't know him, he's a former TV anchor, very famous, and now he's been into politics for 10 years. His party was part of the government back in 2013. He was the finance minister, but since 2015, he sits in the opposition. He's a harsh critic of the prime minister, especially since Netanyahu has been under a criminal trial. And, in the last 2 years with the indictment, and then the trial has begun already, and the witnesses on the trial are set to start giving their testimonies in 2 weeks from now. Yair Lapid is harshly criticizing him. And back to the question of what's Manishtanah, what's new. On the fourth election, it was maybe the first time we had people from inside the Likud and from the core of the right wing stepping out of Netanyahu's circles, forming a new government headed by Gideon Sa'ar, and putting a lot of criticism and opposition on the prime minister from the right wing. So you have several right-wing parties, Avigdor Lieberman and Gideon Sa'ar, as I said, and also Naftali Bennett, the former defense minister, who is another religious Zionist party. he was, heavily criticizing the prime minister, but he did not say, I will not sit with him. So he was playing both sides, but he kept on saying through the campaign, we need change, we need new government, we need replacement. So now we have this gathering of right and left parties from Naftali Bennett, Gideon Sa'ar, of course, Victor Lieberman, Yair Lapid, and the left, and they're all saying, we can serve as the coalition of change. The coalition of change, that's what they call themselves, even though it's not organized yet, but they are discussing it. We are not sure at this point, and will be my last sentence before I turn it back to you. At this point of time, we are not sure if Naftali Bennett, who became a key figure in this event, we're not sure if you rather go with the right wing and the 59 seats and a very problematic coalition of ultra-Orthodox and extremist, Jewish components, or he may agree to work with Israel's liberals, seculars, Masorti, traditionals, and so on, and some lefties, of course. So, yeah, what a time. It's not going to get solved tonight. I promise you that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tal. That's the logjam that you and the jockeying for political positioning sounds exactly the same of the last four elections, and the fact that it's inconclusive again, makes me wonder what are the chances that we are going to go to a fifth election.
So it seems like we might go into a fifth election. The solution to get out of this mess is so complicated that it seems almost unbelievable to happen. I think if Yair Lapid is also a key figure here, he has, as I said, Netanyahu has 30 seats, down from 36, by the way. Yair Lapid has 17 seats. It's up from 14 or 13 seats. So it's an achievement for him, but it's not enough. I mean, well, in Israel you can form a government even if you're not the biggest party. That's happened in the past. The person who did that first was Netanyahu himself. So he formed the government when he was the second party. But there is a gap here between 30 and 17, and it seems weird. But Yair Lapid, through the campaign, has said, it's not about my ego. Even if I'm the second party, I will not demand to be the prime minister. I may think of alternative solutions in order to bring on change. So I am willing to give up a lot in order to bring change around. And by that, what we understood for that, and this is what my understanding, is that he's willing to have Naftali Bennett sit as a first prime minister with only 7 seats in his party. This sounds crazy, but it can be done. You don't have to be with 30 seats to become prime minister. You just need to be an MK. So Yair Lapid may as well go to the president and say, I am giving the first opportunity to my friend Naftali Bennett. And of course, he will do that in order to pull Naftali Bennett out of this right-wing bloc. I mean, this is a big, a huge advance to him. And maybe only on that way, Naftali Bennett will agree not to be part of the right wing and to become part of this center-left, liberal, secular government, and maybe serve for 2 years as prime minister and thereafter Yair Lapid or something like that. This is like one of the ideas that is being floated at the moment. It seems crazy, though.
It's interesting, Tal, that you suggested that. If I just can add one thing, I mean, Naftali Bennett is a religious Zionist and obviously was very much in support of a permanent presence in the Israeli territories. I think he himself lives in a settlement, and for him, he doesn't live in a settlement. He doesn't.
He lives in Ra'anana.
Oh, he was in Ra'anana. Okay, but certainly his ideology is for that. So the question is, how could he actually even form a functioning government if he were to actually adhere to the left, but at the same join with some of the left, because he would actually require the support of the left in order to maintain his stance, but he would be ideologically constrained by what he could do.
So he lives in Ra'anana. He's very young. He was in the high-tech industry, had a couple of exits, very successful exits. So he's very wealthy. And
JCRC actually hosted him. We hosted him about a year ago.
His wife is secular. He's married to a secular wife. I think some of his kids are maybe secular. He has been, through the last year of the pandemic, it was quite interesting to see him as defense minister until Netanyahu formed the government with Benny Gantz, but he was defense minister, and he understood the pandemic immediately, like at the first instance, and he kept saying, through the summer of 2020, Netanyahu was all about annexation. Netanyahu was talking about annexation with the Trump plan and so on. And I don't know if you remember the July 1st deadline where, Israel was planning annexation and so on. And Naftali Bennett, who is actually the champion of annexation, went on during the summer and said, excuse me, we are through the worst pandemic of our time. We have businesses being shut down. People are dying. We don't have enough money to pay, the unemployment and so on. Just, put the annexation on the side. I am all about livelihood. I'm all about, making people, being able to finish a month with money, to give them assistance, about the poverty, about, he was really, for a whole year, Naftali Bennett, who was, again, the champion of annexation, we haven't heard him talking about annexation anymore. All he talks about is the economic situation and how bad this government was handling the situation. So if you put the vaccination rollout on the side for a minute, which was, huge success, if you look at the death rate and at the unemployment rate and at the businesses shut down here in Israel, it's, the situation is grave. And as maybe you're not aware to that, but we are going on without a state budget for 2.5 years now. And the public put the blame on Netanyahu because Netanyahu had a government and could pass a budget if he wanted to. So Naftali Bennett was, harshly criticizing Netanyahu for the situation. And I agree with you, it's going to be a very weird government, but it can only succeed if this government, and it's not a government yet, it's not even a talks yet, it's just my opinion, but it can only succeed if people from the left and from the right will come together and will say, we are not going to make any decision on the Palestinian issue. We're not going to make any decision on annexation or two-state solution. We will not make any decisions on judicial reform. The only thing will take care is the hospitals, the staff, the healthcare, the education system, the businesses, the small businesses, the unemployment, and so on. So it's going to be all about social, civil government. It can be done if they want to. We heard today on radio, I've heard Meretz, who is, Greens, lefty liberals party. I heard them on the radio. They've been asked, will you agree to recommend Naftali Bennett as the next prime minister with his 7 seats? Meretz has 6 seats, and they said, yes, we agree. We are willing for the purpose of change. We are willing to go that far and have Naftali Bennett as the prime minister. Come on.
So Tal, that sounds like 2 things are at play. It sounds like there's an anybody but Bibi, get him out, in that sort of an arrangement. And it seems like we will freeze everything that there is not a consensus on in Israeli society and just focus on domestic issues for the Israeli people. And is that...
So the first part is being already talked on radio and on record. The second part is only my understanding and maybe my writing and my opinion, which I wrote on a website and on Zman Israel. I wrote it in Hebrew. It's not something that I've heard from them. It's just, this is the way I understand things. Otherwise, can you see, the socialist Meretz and Labor sitting together with Naftali Bennett, who is like, very different opinions on many issues. So
it's interesting. You're almost describing almost like a 1-year caretaker post-COVID government.
Exactly.
Like
maybe not 1 year, maybe 2 years, or maybe even more than that. If it's going to be a power share between Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid, then Naftali Bennett may serve as the first one in order to, as I said, to get him out of this right-wing grip that he's in at the moment.
Okay, so let's take your theory for a moment, which I think is fascinating to see Naftali Bennett. If Israel were to do that, I could see actually relations between the Biden administration and Israel having a basic platform for improving, because obviously we know Biden is a friend of Israel from his years on the Hill. We know that Biden is very outspoken against the settlements, and if Naftali Bennett were able to become prime minister from the support of the left, and they were not taking positions on these issues but maintain the status quo, that may also allow for a stronger relationship to be developed between the United States and Israel, and to strengthen the bipartisan relationship, especially if the American political system knew that Israel was constrained from at least for 2 years for engaging in any of these things, because this is what causes the dissension in the bilateral relationship between the United States and Israel. It's mostly over the Palestinian issue. So if that issue were frozen for 2 years, can you envision a situation where it might actually help the relationship between the United States and Israel become even stronger?
Well, I think that, we are looking here at the United States from here, and we see how this administration is very, very busy with its own issues. At first it was the wear a mask. I mean, you can remember like a few months ago, the former president, it didn't even, didn't even expect people to wear a mask. So we are watching from here how the vaccination rollout is going, how, wear a mask, how you are dealing with this huge, the trillions program of assistance and all of this, this is, so United States is focused, on itself, right? And this is probably the situation here. We need desperately a government that will focus on the people and will put, we'll put those, the health system, the education system. I mean, we had a year of lockdown for schools. I mean, kids didn't go to school from March 15, 2020, almost up until just recently.
So, same with my children right here in the United States. Same thing with my kids. Yeah,
I know that, but you're looking at the world tables. Israel is at the top of the table of education system lockdown. So we definitely need a government that will focus on inner issues because of this. This is just right now. I have to tell you, I want you to take things into perspective. What I'm saying at the moment is not even on the table yet. It seems like more of a fantasy. Fantasy government. It's not a real thing yet. So please don't take it to the next step. How will this government will deal with Washington? Because I think we are way too early to even envision.
I know, but after 4 or 5 elections, it's interesting to try to come up with creative ideas at this point. Let me ask you a question, Tal. Am I correct in saying that this may be the first time in a long time that the security and the Israeli-Palestinian issue did not play a role in these elections, but it was more on domestic economics, the pandemics, and Bibi? Would that be correct? And if so, can you explain why?
That's true, but I think for the, if you look at the four election cycles, all together as one event, it's not about security. It's even not about economy. It's about yes, Bibi or not Bibi. We had a huge group here we call it Rak Lo Bibi. So it's just not Bibi. I feel like it's a bit like the Never Trumpers, right? Because many of the groups that were Rak Lo Bibi, came from the right wing. So it started as a lefty and liberal issue of the Rak Lo Bibi, just not Bibi, but definitely through evolution and through the time, it's conquered right and left. So Victor Lieberman, for example, became an absolutely just not Bibi person, and he's in the right wing. And if you talk about Gideon Sa'ar and the New Hope Party, 6 seats of people that were Likud ministers. 4 of them were Likud ministers. Benny Begin and Gideon Sa'ar himself and his number 2, Ifat Shasha Biton, who was housing minister. and Zev Elkin, who is very well known, I suppose, in the United States for being minister for many years. Zev Elkin was actually Netanyahu's right hand, who's traveling with him to Putin all the time and serving as translator and so on. This group of people became the Just Not Bibi from the right wing. They actually hired the Lincoln Project people to help them with the strategic. So they are so all of those people. So the entire political map wasn't about security. Palestinians, not Emirates and Bahrain, was off the table. Everybody were talking about vaccination, and this was Netanyahu's campaign. But the core problem is, how can you discuss diplomacy, or how can you discuss budget, or how can you discuss anything when you know that Netanyahu was holding back on the budget, for example? Or when you want to talk about the Palestinians, it's not about the issue itself. It's about how, it's been 12 years that he is prime minister, so everything evolves around him.
Is there any call for term limits, or like we have in American? Is there any call for term limits like we have in American society on the presidency, 2 consecutive terms? Is there any considering of raising the threshold so that some of the smaller parties wouldn't be able to make the Knesset and therefore give them less power in the power brokering process?
They talk about term limitation all the times, but in order to change the basic clause and have a term limitation, you need to have a 61 at least people. Okay. Do that. So as long as you don't have a government, you don't have 61 majority, you cannot change. Look at the system. The Israeli system definitely needs a reform. I'm talking about the constitutional system. It needs a reform, but how can you do it if you don't have a government to reform it? So as long as we don't have a government, we won't see anything. We won't see a budget. We won't see constitutional reform. We won't see judicial reform. By the way, we need reforms all over, educational reform and healthcare reform. It's just really, we are not in a good situation at the moment after, 2.5 years without a budget. As per the other question was about a term limitation, and you said something else.
Threshold, raising the threshold in the Knesset, but I guess it's the same answer, right?
Threshold was raised a couple of years ago for this very high bar of 3.25. And some people think that actually raising the threshold from 2 straight to 3.25, that what may cause all of these problems.
Oh, really?
But I don't think they will take it down or up at this moment of instability, because as I said, in order to do that, you need 61 government or 61 coalition, and we are not anywhere near that. So as long as we are with a deadlock, you won't see any changes.
So when we look at the net vote in Israel, it seems like about 5% of the population, or 220,000, left the center right or the center for the left, in terms of 220,000 votes of a switch, about 5%. Is this a significant change, an anomaly, or?
And you came to the conclusion from the 59-61?
Yeah, well, from the votes, Likud, according to the totals I have, lost 280,000 votes compared to last time. The Haredim lost 90,000. The center right between Yesh Atid, Kachol Lavan, Tikvat Chadasha, and Kachalit lost 70,000. And Labor and Meretz together gained 220. And the National Religious Parties gained 220.
So first, I have to tell you the voter turnout was lower than usual. The voter turnout was 71.5 or so at the third election a year ago, and this week the voter turnout was 67. Okay. So down 4.5 points or so. Mm-hmm. So all over the country, people were they not trusting the system anymore.
Do you think was that drop Tal across like all parties in participation, or do you think it hit any party harder than the other?
So it's probably hit, well, obviously the Arab population dropped heavily. So most of the drop came, I think the Arab population was dropped from 69 or so to around 50, huge numbers of voter turnout. I don't have the number in front of my eyes at the moment because the calculation are not final. But from what we've seen through the election day and what what we hear from the Arab street, the Arab were angry with their politician for the split. So definitely a very low voter turnout in the Arab street. As per the Likud, I think there was some frustration on the Likud people, specifically in the southern part of Israel. Mm-hmm. The Change Coalition, which is, I mean, I'm not sure about New Hope is a new party, so I can't really tell you what's the voter turnout because we can't compare it. But I have to tell you that for Labor and Meretz, there was some enthusiasm because people who are from the left, they're feeling, you know, the urge for a change. So if you look at Meretz and Labor, you saw some, you know, a rise in the participation. But the parties overall are quite small. So Labor is 7 seats, and I think Meretz is six seats. Together, there are 13 seats. This is probably what is the leftovers of Israel left liberal, you know, secular. So when you say that they have more participation, it's, you know, the changes are from, you know, maybe 12 seats to 13 seats. It's not a big change. It's true that the Likud dropped in some of the parts of the country. As I said, specifically in southern cities who are considered stronghold for the Likud, you know, Beersheba, Sderot, Dimona.
Why is that? Why do you think it fell there? Because of Hamas and the rockets, or what economic isolation, or not being part of the government? And what was that? Why is that?
Well, they are part of the government, but
no, I mean, why would Likud lose? Why did it lose strength in the southern part of Israel?
Because it's a fourth election. Because people feel that, you know, even if they vote, they are, you know, nothing really happens. I think Netanyahu was taking a huge risk when he already had a government. People, you know, he was calling on unity government. Some people were very happy with the unity government. They said, okay, you know, even though he's under trial and he's under criminal charges, you know, it's good that Benny Gantz is joining forces with him to save the country through the pandemic. And then immediately thereafter, back in May, I mean, they signed the agreement in March. And on June, very short time afterwards, there was the first breach of the agreement by Netanyahu. And if you were, you know, when you're asking people through the year, who broke the agreement, who breached the agreement, everybody say Netanyahu in pollings and in the streets. So Netanyahu was unable to convince people that he really cared about, I mean, if he really cared about the people, through the pandemic, he would not dismantle the government that he was begging for, right? So, I mean, those tricks, I mean, you know, I think many people said enough is enough. We are not happy. I mean, look, it's been 2 years, 4 election cycles. On all of them, the majority of the people voted Netanyahu out. I know it's hard to grasp that because his party is the biggest. But on the first election, he had only 60 seats, and he dismantled the Knesset. He said, you know, let's do it. Let's have a do-over. That was the first election. Even though back then he could have formed a government with the Arabs if he wanted, or he could do, you know, other things. Then on the second election, he brought in 55. On the third election, he brought in 58, and on the fourth election, it's 59. So it's between 60 to 55, which means that the other side is unable to form a government, but yet it is telling that if you look at the 65 or the 61 or the 62, it represents more than half of the Israeli people. It represents more than half of the society. If you have a 62 or a 61, that's, you know, that's half plus, and those people are voting him out. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, we can't. I mean,
numbers don't lie, right?
He's just losing the elections all the time, and it's been 4 times.
For a guy who keeps losing, he keeps winning. But right. So let me ask you: did Gideon Sa'ar underperform, and did Benny Gantz overperform?
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Well, you know, if you ask me, and I have this on record, a couple of months ago, I would tell you to begin with that Gideon Sa'ar initial numbers were very hyped. I mean, this is a person who is coming new to have his own party, and he doesn't have a base. He doesn't have like a natural base. He doesn't have digital presence. He doesn't have like phone banks and emails lists and so on. and it doesn't have financial backing. Plus, the most important thing, the rest of them has been practicing for 3 times already with, campaigning and so on. And he came, this is his first election as a party. What do you expect the person, the rest of them like Likud and Yesh Atid, they've been doing it for 3 times already. So for the 4th time, he was facing very seasoned and experienced. To get out to vote and driving voters and base. It's something that, they have their, ability to do it, I think, at sleep by now. So I think the numbers at the beginning were really overhyped. And if you look at the substance, he has 6 seats, and one of the reasons Netanyahu cannot form a government is thank or not thank, but it's due to his presence. So his presence with the 6 seats of right-wing people who are saying enough is enough, it's another reason Netanyahu is unable to form a government. Those people are not left-wing voters; they are right-wing voters. As I told you, it's like the never Trumpers of Israel. So you have them, you have Naftali Bennett. I think Naftali Bennett brought 7 seats. If you look at his base, probably at least half of his base is willing to have a change government because they are upset because, Netanyahu has said, Naftali Bennett has said through the campaign, he may or may not be part of Netanyahu government. So, let's presume at least half of the people realize that they are going with him, which will not end up as being a right-wing government.
So here's a from the audience. Is there any chance that the Knesset, to have a Knesset, you have to have a government, but is there any chance the Knesset will pass a law disqualifying Bibi because of the charges against him?
That's very interesting. Victor Lieberman, who is also a right-wing party, but became a huge never Trumper, a huge never Bibi, a Raklo Bibi, already 2 years ago. He has tweeted this afternoon that he wants to have this bill that will ban a person under bribery trial or under a criminal trial, will ban him from being able to form a government. Now, it is tricky. Again, you need 61 for this bill. You can have the coalition of change with the Arabs inside, with the Joint Arab List and Ra'am as well. You can have them all vote for that. But it is, the system usually don't like when an important bill like that is a personalized bill. It's like, how do you say that? It's like architected, right? To fit Netanyahu. It's like, so a bill like that may be, challenged upon in the Supreme Court, and a bit problematic, I would say.
Because it's specifically targeted towards Bibi, the chances of it passing. Yeah, I would think that a lot of the people, if you're describing more than half of the country and more than half the people voted for parties that were opposed to Bibi, I would think the one thing that they might be willing to they may be willing to form a government on is to create a vote just to vote him out of office and to bar him from serving again, and then have another election after.
If you have 61 to pass that bill, why can't you have 61 to form a government, right? If you are willing to work together, all of these groups, as partners to pass a bill that will not allow him to serve, so why won't you get together and form your own government? It only makes sense. It's
because I'm thinking that between, let's say you want to get, let's say if you have all these parties that voted against Bibi, and then you have Naftali Bennett who's not crazy about Bibi, and you got Gideon Sa'ar who's not crazy about Bibi, and Avigdor Lieberman, and all they left between all of them, because you have more than 60 votes that can get together, vote to put him out of office, and then they could agree on one purpose only for one time, and then go. It seems like if they really want to get rid of Bibi, could they all get together, vote him out, and bar him from running, and then have a 5th election where he can't be a contestant?
I would say the most constitutional and the right order of things would be form your own government, vote him out, not through a bill like that, but vote him out through the proper way and the most No, we already had elections. They can form a government as
Oh, okay.
just do a government. If you're able to collect 61 people that will change the constitutional law, do it right. First, get a government. This government may work together to get any type of legislation, but it has to be in due order. It shouldn't be personalized to one person. It should go through a public discourse, like basic law. When you change a basic law, you should go through the right process of putting it out, letting the people react, and have it orderly done. On the long run, maybe, but if you do it just to get rid of him, it will turn back on them. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Another question from the audience is, if the joint Arab list and/or Ra'am were to form a coalition, what would be that impact on the Israeli government if both Arab parties were to realign?
So, as I said earlier, in order to have a change government, a change coalition with Naftali Bennett and Gideon Sa'ar and Avigdor Lieberman and Yair Lapid, you also have to get in Labor and Meretz, but also you need to get at least one of those Arab parties. So that's the situation we are at the moment. Neither side can form a government without the Arabs. Neither side. And Netanyahu wants to form a government with his 59. He needs to bring along Ram, at least Ram as the Islamic movement. He needs to bring them along. If the other side, including Naftali Bennett, so I put Naftali Bennett in both aisles, if you notice. So the other side, with Naftali Bennett, if they want to form a government, they need either Ra'am or the Joint Arab List. There is no other way. So, I mean, that's the situation is actually not that bad when the Israeli society needs to come to its senses and realize that you cannot form a government in Israel without a minority. You need the minority in. And
could that? Go ahead, please. I'm sorry. If a majority, I'm trying to ask you. I cannot. I can't envision. But that just because I can't envision it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. Can you envision an Israeli government relying on an anti-Zionist party or Islamist party? Would they have any control in security decision making for the Israeli? I can just see.
Just let me tell you. Are you aware that as we speak right now, you have two anti-Zionist parties in the government, in the current government? These are Shas and United Torah Judaism. They are not Zionist parties by definition.
They're Jewish, but not Zionist, right?
They are. This is what they say upon themselves. This is not me making it up. This is their definition. They're opposing military. They're opposing a draft. They're opposing many values of a democratic state. They are in the government for many years. So, I mean, I don't compare it. It's a huge problem. I cannot imagine a government having Ra'am in the government where we have to attack Gaza or attack Syria. And what will this coalition partner will do? I mean, it's unthinkable. The thing is, Ra'am or the Joint Arab List will not be part of the government according to what we understand. They may be like Rabin government did back
the outside.
Like support from outside, exactly. So they will not be on the shared responsibility principle, but they will be a beneficiary of the government because they will demand, committee chairmanship. They will demand budget allocations. They will demand. Did you know that Israel's never had a new Arab town since the country was established? Not
no,
even
I didn't know that.
No, so Israel never built an Arab city. And what did I say? Arab country? I meant Arab
town,
city.
You said, yeah.
An Arab locality, right?
Yeah.
Not even one from the day the country was formed. So they have a deep crisis of housing and a deep crisis of violence within their society. And they want to solve those issues. So they will demand, certain things in order to be a supporter from the outside if they go with either side.
Let me ask you, could you see a situation where the Arab parties are support the government from the outside for social and domestic reasons, but the government gets parties to support it, other parties to support it for the outside on foreign policy and military reasons, so that you have almost like, two variables that keep you steady. As long as you help support them on social issues and you support them on sort of foreign policy and security matters, that Bibi was able to cobble together two sets of other, to create like a like a seesaw to balance out the middle.
That depends really who from the Arab parties you're talking about. If you talk about the Joint Arab List, probably not. Part of their agenda is two-state solution, is assistance to the Palestinian people. All of the Arab politicians, even if they are from the Joint Arab List of Forum, they are, they go on visit in the jails for the Arabs, terror people that are jailed in Israel's cells. So, I mean, the Ram will probably be easier to handle because Ram leader Mansour Abbas, he keeps saying, I'm not here for the Palestinian people, I'm here for, Arab citizens in the Negev, in the north. And he wants to have more budget and more money and more employment and more infrastructure and transportation and so on. For example, they want to have like, better transportation on Shabbat. The country doesn't have public transportation on Shabbat. And they say, excuse me, I mean, we want to have in our own villages better transportation. There's no reason we will sit in Shabbat like the Jewish people. I mean, if you talk to Mansour Abbas, he has lots of respect for the Jewish character of the country. He says, I am a citizen in a Jewish state and I have no intention to change that. Never. I fully understand the need of the Jewish people to have its own land. And I have no aspiration whatsoever with respect to the Jewish character of the country. Having said that, kindly assist us with our own villages. We need a new city. We need new neighborhoods. We need better infrastructure. They've been deprived of budget and they've been deprived of, how do you say that? They've been discriminated for many years. And they want to get that fixed. They want to be, fully equal rights Israeli citizens. So.
Right. I just want to point out that Nissan Hershkowitz pointed out that UH and United Torah Judaism Shas are non-Zionist. Naturi Carter is anti-Zionist. There's a distinct difference if you read the Haredim or read the respective party charters.
You are right. You're absolutely right. My term was wrong. I didn't mean to call them anti-Zionist, but definitely when they sit in the government, they are not defining themselves as Zionist.
Yeah, and a good correction. Thank you for that. That was important. Tal, is there anything you would like to? This has been extraordinary and a fascinating discussion. It's like it's on one hand, it's maddening that the government can't move forward. On the other hand, it's incredibly creative at the possibilities they might endure. If you had to go ahead and what are your last thoughts? What are your last conclusions about where do you think we'll be in 2 weeks from now? Or is that like trying to predict a dream?
Yeah, well, this is the Startup Nation. Startup Nation has to be very creative and very, you need a lot of imagination, creativity, and I would say to be yazam and someone who comes up with good ideas. And this is what we need at the moment. I mean, there are some young politicians. If you look at Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett and Gideon Sa'ar, the three of them are maybe a generation younger than Netanyahu. So Netanyahu is about 72 and they are between 49 to 54, 54, 55. That's generation, downwards. And they must behave like their own generation, which means, think out of the box. I mean, Naftali Bennett has been a defense minister who was praised for thinking out of the box on many issues. During the Gaza war of 2014, he wasn't defense minister back then, but he was definitely thinking out of the box. And also when it comes to the pandemic, he was the first, politician here to understand what's going on and think out of the box. So I was actually trying to talk to him this morning and telling him, we know you've been thinking out of the box, he's a right-wing politician, but, we've been in a good, good connection, reporters and politicians. And I just wrote to him, you should think out of the box. You definitely need to think out of the box this time. With the
Tal, on that. No, please finish.
I'm sorry?
No, finish your last sentence. I'm sorry. Well, you had one more sentence you were ready.
All of them need to think out of the box.
Yeah, I think we all need to think out of the box, or we're going to stay in the same box that we've been in there. So, and the one thing that I heard somebody say to me that was very funny when they say, we always say that the US and Israel are based on shared democratic values. And nobody can prove that Israel isn't a democracy. If anything, it's a democracy on steroids at this point now with 4 elections. So
I'll give you that. We totally had enough of it. I mean, it's just so tiring, really.
But for your job, it makes interesting. For you, it's perfect. I mean, I'm sure Israelis are tired, but for you, it's an ultimate chess game.
Even political reporters want just to cook the Passover dinner and have
political reporter.
And we just want to have like a quiet, nice seder, and that's it. I mean,
Well, maybe we should, next time we can arrange that the elections will not be held pre-Pesach and will be good. Thank you, Tal. Thank you for an absolutely wonderful, fascinating discussion. Political developments in Israel. For those of us who watch from afar, who've got a lot of family in Israel, a lot of friends in Israel, been to Israel, we feel it, we watch it, we're focused on it. And thank you for providing such a wonderful, clear explanation of what's going on and all the potential variables. And Chag Sameach to you and your family. And may you have, and maybe we'll have you back after the next election if there is one.
Hope not. Let's hope not.
Even then, we'll have you back anyway. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful hearing from you. Be well.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. And this concludes our series. This concludes, everybody, our talk. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good day.